Hi, my name is Nicholas Asher, and with Julie Hunter, we're going to present to you when learning becomes impossible. This result has to do with testimony, which is important to current ways of getting knowledge. Why? Well, we often lack access to firsthand information, and even if we have it, we may not be able to understand that information because it's too complicated. So we have to rely on testimony to explain complicated information, to tell us about stuff we don't have direct access to, so that we can update our beliefs. Now, belief and interpretation of this testimony are intertwined, and this is what can preclude learning, even with good epistemic practices. Here's the plan for our short talk. I'm going to set up learning from testimony, then we'll talk about first order interpretive blindness, or IB, then higher order IB, and conclude with some thoughts on the complexity of IB. So let's look at beliefs about testimony. How a learner F hat treats testimony T depends on F hat's background beliefs or hypotheses H about T. And these hypotheses will assign a degree of belief to various bodies of belief, as you can say here, where the conditional probability of T on H is 1 if H thinks that T is totally trustworthy. We can then also calculate the marginal probability of a body of testimony T using a standard formula. Now, adding some complexity to this picture is the dynamics of bodies of evidence or bodies of testimony, which evolve over time. Examples of this are 24/7 news sites, but also social media sites. And so a learner's background beliefs will have a probability distribution over those bodies of testimony that can be updated via new evidence. And here we use a standard Bayes formula where we take a prior probability of a hypothesis, a belief, and the probability that we computed for a particular stage of testimony up to now, to compute the new probability, updated probability of that belief based on the new evidence. Now, iterated updates reinforce belief in any T for which our learner has one hypothesis with a non-zero probability that is positively disposed to T. And so here's a definition about evaluating hypotheses that are positive for T. That is that they think that T is more likely than not to be true, and they continue to, and they don't lose this credibility of T in T. Okay, so we have this folk theorem that says, suppose that our learner is updating with a body of evidence, and we have one of these positive belief functions for T. Well, and the learner may have many other hypotheses or beliefs that are maybe less favorable to T, not favorable to T at all, but also don't get any more favorable towards T. Well, then what happens is as the learner continues to update on T, the probability of T in the limit becomes the lim sup of the conditional probability of T n on that positive belief function. And the positive belief function takes all of the probability mass away from the other beliefs. So agents can exploit this, agents that build testimony can exploit this interaction to guide learners, in particular to certain bodies of testimony. So a Facebook-like algorithm for us is one which chooses stages of testimony by exploiting one of these positive T-positive functions. And it chooses the stages so that the conditional probability of T eventually converges to 1 when it's conditional on H, on this positive H. There's also another kind of a feature that many new information sites have, which is that belief functions can be probability-wise model complete, What that means is that information that's independent of or inconsistent with a certain body of evidence will get a probability that's 1 minus the probability of t given h. Okay, so now let's look at first order interpretive blindness. To learn a new fact or psi, our learner's estimation at some stage of updating should be closer to the objective or ideal assignment to psi than her prior probability for psi. And that's what we write here in this formula. And what we can now show that given that G is a Facebook-like algorithm for F hat, picking a body of testimony, and the positive belief function that that Facebook algorithm exploits is also probability-wise model complete, then we can show that F hat is incapable of learning any information that's independent of or inconsistent with T. Well, maybe higher order Bayesianism can come to the rescue. Higher order Bayesianism provides learnable constraints, higher order beliefs to promote good first order learning. And so beliefs at n+1 constrain and assign probabilities to hypotheses at level n, as you can see here. Shouldn't this solve the problem of IB? Well, no, because bodies of testimony can contain arguments that undercut higher order constraints. And we have a formal notion for this that we call argumentatively complete. And a body of evidence is argumentatively complete, just in case any other body of evidence that might attack, that is, provide information like conceivably lower credibility in T, is attacked in the next stage of T. Now, if a body of evidence is argumentatively complete, then we can show that our learner, if she has any non-zero probability measure over the set of beliefs concerning T, then there is one H that she has, one belief hypothesis that she has, that will eventually converge to 1 on T. The probability, conditional probability of T given H will converge to 1. And that H is also PWMC. And from that, it's an easy step, unfortunately, to show that even if our learner is a higher order Bayesian and she does everything she's supposed to, she will eventually be incapable of learning psi, where psi is some fact that's independent of or inconsistent with the T that she's conditionalized her beliefs on. So our analysis is that IB can result from good inductive learning practices and rational resource management when confronted by contemporary bodies of testimony. And in contrast to other epistemic biases, IB doesn't result from clearly bad epistemic practices or irrationality or some kind of exogenous concerns. And that makes IB particularly hard to combat, as we know from real life examples of those of people who are stuck in these epistemic bubbles or echo chambers. So an ME learning game is a way that we try to model this. It's a game with 2 players, an investigator E and our learner F hat. And they try to construct a larger conversation by consecutively playing elements from our vocabulary, which are sequences of valuation hypotheses. Now, there's some constraints on this play. The most important one is what we call knowledge first. That is, F hat will accept a sequence from E if and only if he has no hypothesis that attacks sigma. Well, what does this show us? One of the things we know in this set of games is that the complexity of winning a game when you want to show that the person is IB, is interpretively blind, the complexity of that set is in fact co-RE or pi1 in the Borel hierarchy, whereas the complexity of its counterpart, where F hat eventually accepts hypotheses not supported by T, is RE. And we can show, given our assumptions, as we do in the paper, that if E's winning condition is to get F hat to eventually accept hypotheses not supported by T, that she has no winning strategy in our learning games. If we do change the conditions, in particular, if we get rid of the knowledge first condition, we can give G a winning condition, a winning strategy, given that her winning condition is to persuade F to accept hypotheses not supported by T. Okay, in conclusion, IB is a formal consequence of good epistemic practices and modern bodies of testimony. Higher order Bayesian constraints don't help us really solve this problem, or are not necessarily a panacea. We also have shown that IB is impossible to dislodge when present, but it can be prevented by changing our epistemic constraints. Thank you, and I hope you enjoy the paper.